Now this is an example of a speaking frame, which is basically a writing frame, but for an oral format. Remember, the idea is to give your students structure and, if needed, language support. We see no reason why this should apply to written texts only. The genre here is the talk show. If you have ever watched talk shows, you will know that they can be quite confused and sometimes all over the place. In class, however, we want ours to be well structured and organized. For that purpose, we have subdivided the genre talk show into 5 separate steps: the introduction, the opening statement, the discussion of the first topic, the discussion of other topics, and an open question section and the summary. In a talk show, you usually find a moderator or host and their guests. These participants interact with one another during the talk show. We call this interaction genre move. In the introduction, the moderator or host introduces the topic and guests. Then, the guests present their opening statement. After that, the moderator addresses the guests and asks questions. The guests respond and explain their statements and engage in a discussion with each other. This discussion continues through the next steps. The moderator will need to discipline guests, if necessary, may reconcile ideas, and overall leads the discussion. The guests, on the other hand, may interrupt, suggest new topics, and voice opinions. When all topics have been discussed or the time is up, the moderator summarizes the discussion and ends the talk show. When you put all of these steps and genre moves onto a sheet of paper, you get something like this. In this case, it was done using Microsoft Word. You will notice that there is still quite some space left on the writing frame. This is not accidental. Rather, it is intended for students to take notes, as they will be required to be either moderators or guests. If you look at the genre moves more closely, you will find that they describe student actions like explaining, giving an opinion, or reconciling. Each of these actions requires specific vocabulary, which you may label as transitioning, asking for opinions, or reconciling, and for which students can find a variety of vocabulary items themselves and write them into their frames. Alternatively, you can supply your students with dictionaries or word lists like this one, from which they can choose the vocabulary items they like. If you want to introduce the talk show as a genre or teach students at a lower level, you can also present them with a frame that contains some vocabulary items as suggestions. If you want to make sure that students are prepared and can actively take part in the talk show, you can provide them with pre-structured role cards. Here is an example for the moderators and the guests. Please note that once you have a format that both you and your students like, you can change the writing frame to whatever genre you want to focus on. For example, a movie review, or a comment for English class, or political sciences.